Welcome to the Hey Soul Sista podcast, where Mel Histon will guide you through life's big questions and bring you one step closer to doing this crazy journey as best you can.
Hey Soul Sisters! Many people, both in the States, United States and around the world, are still reeling from the recent decision by the US Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade, so that the states may now make it illegal to perform or obtain an abortion. For many of us, even if we don't live in the US, this feels a bit like a personal blow. And if we feel personally affected, it is because we are personally affected. The ruling diminishes the self-ownership of all women, which is something I believe. I know there would be some people who don't believe that, but I absolutely do. And today, we're going to have a chat with Alex Morris about growing up in the southern states of America, on the Bible Belt, her journey to Australia, and what it's like being a progressive woman watching the political and social changes in her home country, the States, over the last few years, including the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Now, I love Alex. She is one soulful sister and one of my favourite Hey Soul Sista guests.
Hey, Mel. Thanks for having me.
Alex is a journalist. She's a poet, a blogger and writer with a wonderful creative spirit. Now, Alex, as I said, was actually born and raised in South Carolina.
That's right, yep.
Yeah. And she made her way across the world to Australia, and we've now claimed her as our own.
I am dual citizen, actually. I am Australian and American, so yeah, very lucky, yeah.
There you go. So when did that happen?
Over COVID.
Oh, I love it. You got dual citizenship.
I know. I was like, now's a good time to make sure. I was worried, actually, about everything in the U.S. I was like, I need to make sure I can get back here.
That was clever. And again, we've claimed you as our own, especially in Newcastle.
Yeah, I feel very loved in Newcastle. I feel very lucky to be here.
Yes. Well, and you know what? You're doing lots of cool things in the community, both creative and philanthropic, writing for the Newcastle Herald, hosting poetry nights, running creative workshops, and supporting local community projects with Awesomeness Newcastle.
And you're helping with that as well, Mel. So thank you so much for your support with that. We'll get you back next year.
Well, I love Awesomeness Newcastle. Just quickly tell us a little bit about that.
Awesome Newcastle is actually part of the broader Awesome Foundation, and it's just no strings attached, $1,000 grant giveaways. Every month we give away $1,000 cash to good ideas in the community. And if you want to learn more about it, you can visit Awesome Newcastle's website, but also check out Awesome Foundation because it occurs all over the world and it's about non-bureaucratic philanthropy.
Oh, I love it. And I've been to a couple of the nights and contributed towards that $1,000. Yeah. And I actually just recently, one of the projects that pitched on, I think the second night that I did it, was the Reclaim the Night March. And that went ahead and I was like, oh, that's so great. They got $1,000 from Awesome Newcastle to put towards their signage and stuff.
Yeah. All kinds of really interesting, cool things happen from it. So yeah, and we appreciate our board members who not only give money, but also kind of debate and discuss and help push for the best idea. Yeah. It's a little bit of a competition, but not in a terrible way, in a fun way.
No, but it's really interesting because the couple of times I've done it, they've been such varied projects. You kind of go, oh, it's a bit difficult to choose. But in both the ones that I was involved in, I was like, yeah, I think that was the right decision.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And especially when you see that project come to life, it's like, yeah, well, we contributed to that.
Yeah, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. So, Alex, you're also passionate about positive body and beauty image without the use of makeup.
Oh, I don't hate makeup, but I am critical of marketing campaigns that push women to think that they're not enough. I think that's the best way to
I was going to say, because I'm sitting here with the face of makeup right now. And you're also an advocate for women's rights, including women having rights over their body and right to safe access to an abortion.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about this. I don't post about this very much on social media because sometimes I feel like it's just kind of shouting into the void, but a podcast sounds like a little bit of a better way to have a kind of, I don't know, thoughtful discussion around it. So I was so honored when you asked me to come on.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I just think it's something that we were all horrified about when we all saw on the news that the Roe versus Wade had been overturned. I would say that, you know, many a woman all over the world would have been horrified, and I was thinking of The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. Well, and when Handmaid's Tale came out before Roe was overturned, I think a lot of people, and Trump was in office, and Mike Pence actually is more, Mike Pence, the vice president, who's a little bit more long-term, anti-bodily autonomy, anti-choice. He was kind of the person I was thinking of when all of this was happening. It's been a long time coming, the overturning. It's been on people's minds for a long time, and that's why, we're seeing, movies and films and shows about it and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And so just quickly, it's funny. I think I was watching Overturning Roe? I might have been, but I was watching something, and it was actually showing this clip of Donald Trump and how, like, pre him entering politics, he was just like, it's a woman's right to do whatever she wants with her body, saw this video footage of him saying that, and then all of a sudden, as soon as he joined the Republican Party and went into politics, he did the total 180 switch.
Yeah, and I think it was called Reversing Roe. It's a documentary. I was just brushing up on some history on that, and it's interesting because I think the religious right really want to push for, like, they have a powerful sway. Their votes are very powerful, and if you want to run for office and you want the Republican vote, the religious right is who you have to cater to. So it's very easy for, I think, George Bush the first, senior, I guess, had the same situation as Donald Trump. Multiple people have changed their stance when they've realized that it will win them votes, which is terrifying because, how little do you actually care about what you believe in?
Yeah, absolutely. That you can switch like that.
Yeah, and Trump's another great example. Yeah, he was, and he's from New York. He is not exactly a pillar of family values, as we all know. So the whole Trump presidency is just like, oh God.
And let's hope he doesn't get back in.
Oh, I know, Mel. I'm just like, I can't even process that. But yeah, I'm that's 2 years away, and I'm terrified. So yeah.
Well, I want to jump back in to talking a little bit about your childhood and growing up in South Carolina. I would say Dakota, then Carolina. Sorry, on the Bible Belt. So just quickly, what is the Bible Belt for people who don't really know?
Well, I'd say the Bible Belt is kind of the southern states. It's a stretch probably starting in Texas, making its way up to the Mason-Dixon line. So Virginia, West Virginia, some people contend that West Virginia isn't the South, but I kind of feel like it is. It is connected to the Civil War and slavery. Some people argue about Missouri and Oklahoma and stuff like that, but where I grew up, South Carolina was unquestionably a southern state. It was one of the first to secede from the Union, if I remember correctly. I also lived in North Carolina, right above it, and I've also lived in Kentucky, which is also, they were neutral during the Civil War, but they also, I think, owned plenty of slaves, unfortunately. People who lived in Kentucky. So all three of those states don't have the best reputation in many progressives' eyes. And I've also lived in Washington, D.C., which I think is a little bit more of it's the nation's capital, and it's a little bit more progressive. So I have had a chance to but that is right on the border there. Like, Maryland's above and Virginia's below. So I haven't made it that far north, and I haven't lived in California or anything like that. And they're completely different places.
Now, I was reading one of your articles in the Herald, and you were saying how many Aussies travel to the States and visit LA, Vegas, Chicago, and New York, but we miss the South.
Yeah.
So given that you grew up in the South, what is it that you love about it?
Yeah, and I do understand that it has a bad reputation, but it isn't all bad, and I believe that people should give it a chance. I believe that they're honest, kind people who, I guess, are just really authentic. I think that they're very polite. They, kind of give you the shirt off their back. I think I say simplicity, but not in simplicity like dumb. Simple as in just easy to read, kind, generous people, and incredible food and beautiful nature and culture. It's funny, people write off the South because of the Civil War and because of the fact that there was slavery, but there's actually a lot of diversity and multiculturalism in the South, believe it or not. And some of the places that I've lived, like Asheville, North Carolina, is kind of, people describe it as the San Francisco of the South. Like, there's definitely pockets of the South that are not just people marrying their cousins barefoot and pregnant, waving Confederate flags. I don't know, all those stereotypes. It's definitely more than that.
I'm going to say, I went to New Orleans years ago.
Oh, yeah.
best food ever.
Oh my God. I love New Orleans. I haven't been there that many times, but great food. The music. I love it that on a Tuesday night at 2 a.m, there's like a brass band marching down the street. Like, oh my God, there's so much. I mean, you could just study it. I'd love to go back to the U.S. and study it because it's so full of conundrums and oxymorons, but beautiful people and amazing accents that are kind of getting less and less as you know, more like as the mainstream accent kind of we hear on TV and stuff like that, and Southern accents get picked on a little bit, but I don't know. It's not all bad, and there's certainly some beauty as well, for sure.
I love your Southern accent.
Oh, well, it's funny because most Americans don't even think I sound Southern anymore. Some
really?
Americans don't even know I'm from the U.S. It's really devastating because I've been here for 10 years in Newcastle.
Yeah.
People, I was at the museum and some people from Louisiana didn't know that I was American and just broke my heart. Because I used to give tours in a cave in Kentucky, and I can do a real strong Southern accent if you want me to. I can do the whole thing. And now, staying in the mouth of Lost River Cave, it's one of the largest cave mouths this side of the Mississippi River, blah, blah, blah. I can do it.
I love it.
It comes back when I go home.
I bet. And you've just been home recently.
Yeah. And it's funny because even just talking to my American friends, the longer I'm home, the less Australian I sound. So it's funny. Accents are so silly.
Yeah. Oh, well, you still sound very American to me.
Oh,
I love it. I love that accent. It's like whenever I go to the States and people go, "Are you English?" No. Weird.
Want to fill your soul with more? Go to thesistercode.com.
So then how does the southern states compare to the northern states? Because it's interesting even that there's that there is a definition between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a good friend here from LA, and it's really interesting just talking to her about, you know, how she saw the United States growing up versus how I did. I think that the U.S. as a whole is more religious than Australia, but I think the South is particularly more religious. I grew up very religiously. I went to church every Sunday. We said prayers before eating. We said prayers before going to bed. And I mean, it's really interesting when you look at kind of the way ideas progress, including abortion, because when you read about the history of abortion in the United States, it didn't really become a political issue until after Roe v. Wade. It was kind of something no one had strong opinions about. Yeah. So I do think that an interesting thing when we talk in the United States about red states versus blue states, Republican states versus Democratic states, Republican states tend to be in the Bible Belt, although they're also in the Midwest and stuff like that, and blue states tend to be California, New York, stuff like that. There is a difference in not just religion, but I think lifestyle. I think there's a lot more rural activities, I guess, farms and less going on, less cities, and
that's always going to have an impact, having an agrarian economic base. I sound really fancy then. I think I got that from Good Will Hunting. But, you know, it'd be like in Australia, you know, if you're growing if you live in a region where it's, you know, predominantly the economy is around farming and agriculture, that's going to be very different from urban areas and different points of view, because people at the end of the day will kind of do what works for them, what they've learnt, what they've inherited, you know, the beliefs and I guess religion and politics that they've inherited, and then how it impacts them.
And it's and fascinating, like, so I don't own a car now. My partner does have a car, but I get around by bike, by walking, by train, and by bus, and an occasional Uber. And I couldn't do that in anywhere I lived in the States because there are no footpaths, there's no sidewalks. Like, you know, I mean, you could ride a bike, but you'd be putting yourself in a lot more danger. And it's so funny because before I moved to places like Washington, D.C., where there was good public transport, you just didn't even think about it. Everyone owned a car like that. Everyone drives everywhere in a car, and it's such a and when I go back to see my girlfriend who lives in Texas and even in LA, there is public transport. I mean, this is a subset, but there's just so many like small things that do make big differences for how you see the world, I think, like even commuting or, you know, how we gather. Do you go to a cool nightclub or do you go to a potluck dinner? Yeah. You know, like those type of things. So, I mean, it's, and this happens in Australia. I think you can look at it everywhere. Sometimes it's just the difference between country versus city, but it does influence the way we see the world a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Because it's funny, again, being an Australian, watching America, and I love American culture. I love American TV. I love American culture. I always have. I've been over to the States probably about 8 times now. 8 or 9 times, and I love it. And I get so excited because, especially when it's, I remember the first time I went to the States and I saw Yoo-hoo. Is it Yoo-hoo? It's a drink.
Yoo-hoo, yeah, the chocolate milk.
Yeah, the milk. And I saw Junie Mints because in Seinfeld there's an episode of Junie Mints.
Yes, yeah.
Milk Duds. I was like, all these things that were movie references I would get so excited about because, okay, that was the culture that I grew up with. It was like American TV. And I go, so it's interesting when I think about the Southern States and the Bible Belt, I think about like The Blind Side, Skeleton Key. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't, Mel.
It's quite scary. It's like voodoo. It's voodoo.
Okay, cool.
And like where the crawdads sing. So, you know, there are the strong family values, Christian values and political views. Yeah, and I do want to just voodoo
and voodoo. Yeah, that's very, like, I think that's the kind of New Orleans kind of vibe, I guess. But I do just want to, like, I think that living in different places gives me a bit of a perspective. But you could bring in any other American who could see things completely differently. So I'm one American out of 330 million. So just want to say that at some point in the podcast that I'm just one point of view. So
yeah. So do you think, and we'll go into talking a bit about Roe versus Wade now, do you think that women in the South, given that, you know, religion plays a more important part in their lives, you know, and a lot of religion, Christian religion is around, you know, is quite, it's not rules, what is it?
It is. It's puritanical kind of values. Christian values, and it's about, you know, tradition and the way things were, and also kind of often, not all, like my parents go to a very progressive church now, but a lot of it's like a woman's place in the home, and, you know.
So it'd be really interesting whether women in the South would see, you know, privately be quite horrified about the way that has turned, you know.
Right. I think that women, I know that there are women who are anti-abortion. There are many women out there that think that abortion is wrong. So we can't say that all women believe that pro-choice is the right option. But I think there are women in the South who are particularly terrified of what's been happening. You can watch I think her name was Wendy Davis, who did the filibuster on the floor in Austin, Texas, to stop abortion rights from being limited. And the House was just full. I don't know if it's the House or the Senate, but the political office, the floor was full of women that came from all over Texas.
I saw that.
Yeah, all over Texas, backing her, screaming, cheering.
Yes.
I definitely think there are a lot of women in the South who are passionately pro-choice, and almost even, and actually, I mean, I'm happy to kind of talk about just my own observations in this. Like, I think I grew up religiously, but I also have a memory of being at church with my mom and my grandma, Greenwood Baptist. I was probably 8 or 9, and Brother Jim was doing a sermon all about late-term abortion and telling the whole audience all the things that happened. It was very gruesome, probably inaccurate. And, you know, my mother, who is a Christian woman, married at 18 to my father, who she's still with, got up and left. Yeah. And, I mean, I think that stays with me, because even though I know that my mom probably has a different type of traditional values than I have, she understands what it's like to be a woman, and she knows women who have had abortions, and she knows that this kind of ultimatum and this kind of, you know, fire and brimstone, these women are going to hell, is a problem. And I, you know, even though she and I have had our differences, especially as I got older and started discussing birth control and stuff like that, I do remember that, because I know that you cannot say that all Southern women are happy to be at home just popping out babies until the cows come home. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to backpedal a little bit, because I'm like, there might be some people listening to this who don't actually know what Roe versus Wade is.
Yeah.
So it was back in 1973, a lawsuit was famously led to the US Supreme Court making a ruling on abortion rights when Jane Roe, who was an unmarried pregnant woman, and that wasn't her real name, she filed a suit on behalf of herself to challenge Texas abortion laws. There was a Texas doctor, joined Roe in the lawsuit, arguing that the state's abortion laws were too vague for doctors to follow and that he'd previously been arrested for violating the statute. You know, at the time, abortion was legal in Texas unless it was done to save the mother's life, but otherwise it was a crime to even attempt one. So in Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decided that it was a fundamental right to privacy that protects a woman's choice whether to have an abortion. So, and at the time, that was massive.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. And it's interesting because that was the 70s and it changed. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can look at women having access to an abortion, just completely change the cultural landscape and how we see things. And it's fascinating now, particularly because most of my friends in the States are in southern states. I've got a girlfriend in Texas who's just had a daughter and is now realizing that her daughter is growing up. The Texas has banned it. Yeah. Texas is really bad. Another one is Kentucky's really bad. But she and her friends are just like, what are we going to do? Do we even want to have more children? Because if we decide to have more children and something goes wrong, late-term pregnancy, like they're going to have to leave Texas. Texas is a huge state. And you know what? If you have, and if you look at late-term pregnancy abortions or terminations, it is so rare, but when it happens, it is devastating. It is to do with almost always like terrible situations with the fetus. It's not like I changed my mind.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
It's so sad.
I think I had a friend years ago who had an abortion at, it would have been about 22 weeks, but they had discovered that through scans that the baby had a condition where it wasn't compatible to life.
Yeah.
So they were like, as soon as his baby was born, it was going to die.
Yeah.
And so you go, do you actually then carry it to full term or just go, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's have an abortion now and end this pregnancy now rather than carrying a baby
forced to carry a baby that is going to die.
And you know that.
It's yeah, and it's so interesting if you do watch the documentary Reversing Roe because it's so late, such a late-term abortion. You hear Donald Trump talking about why he thinks it's so wrong, and Brother Jim talking about it when I was growing up. That's really where people's because you start to see an actual body forming. But the reality is no woman would wait that long and change her mind on a whim. It just shows you like the lack of
understanding.
Awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I kind of got sidetracked there, Mel, but I guess it's fascinating because this revolutionary thing happened in the 1970s and then slowly a religious movement. And I do think it's really connected to religion because the people who passed Roe v. Wade, they were all men on that Supreme Court. And I think it was a conservative court. But at that time, it was not a political issue. It was just... You know what I mean? It was...
Yeah, because back then, the reason why this was really important was that there were a lot of people in marginalised groups, women that were maybe living in poverty who didn't have access to safe abortions or safe healthcare. They were from maybe ethnic communities or even I know a lot of African Americans. They just didn't have the access to the right healthcare and the right support. And so they were going underground and having dodgy backyard abortions that were ending in the actual woman dying. Not every time, but woman being maimed, dying herself.
All kinds of things, and drinking like all these. It was unregulated and it was dangerous, and a lot of people say people are never going to stop getting abortions. People are going to stop getting safe abortions. And I think you make such a good point. It is connected to poverty. Rich women will always have access to abortion. That's an important thing to remember as well.
Do you know? Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I was reading an article and it said that I think it was before Roe versus Wade, they said there was about 1 million abortions a year in the States. And then after Roe versus Wade, it's the same number, but the difference is the safety.
Yes.
And that woman after Roe versus Wade came into being, the new legislation back in the 70s, that it just meant that it wasn't the number of abortions did not go up. It stayed the same, but women were safe.
Yeah.
And they were done,
Yeah. It's very simple in my mind. I feel like it's always, but it is interesting talking to people who kind of disagree, particularly like growing up in the South and realizing the value people place on, I guess, the idea of who you might be if you had a baby, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's so simple. For me, it's just so simple. Like you said, it's like people are going to have them either way. Let them have access to it in a safe way where they can continue to live their life. I don't know. I think I realized early on that I worry that there's a belief that, you know, women should, if you're going to have sexual activity, it should be connected to having babies. That's a very religious standpoint, and people don't always come out and say that. But I do think, why is religion the driving force behind?
Which is so interesting.
Yeah,
you know why it's interesting? Because I've been to Pompeii. People were having sex for pleasure for thousands of years. You go to Pompeii, you go to go anywhere to a museum or read, different, historical accounts, and people have been having sex for pleasure for years, whether they want to admit it or not. They have been.
I know. I mean, like, there's all kinds of crazy. If you want to like get into like sexual, the history of sex and like the Romans and all kinds of stuff, like so many crazy stories out there. And I think I remember as a teenager going to my friend's church, and it was a lot of this wait till marriage. I remember the woman made us all close. It was a woman pastor, which was progressive, I guess, but she made us all close our eyes, and then she asked for a show of hands for how many of us were going to wait until marriage.
Oh my God.
I mean? Yeah, and I remember I was like, I'm not raising my parents were religious, and I think it is conflicting because you are in, the family is valuable, a 2-parent home, there's all these values that are celebrated, but also I recognize from a young age, because my parents were educated and they wanted me to do what I wanted, I wanted to live a wild and crazy life, and I wanted to experience everything, and I can't imagine thinking like I won't experience something because there's a chance that I might be forced into motherhood. Yeah. And that is a long bow to draw, I guess, in some ways, but I do think about that, and I do think some people really hate the idea of a free woman. And birth control's great too,
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's kind of like there's this idea that the pleasure that comes with sex is wrong, and I wonder about that with religion sometimes. So
I think the pleasure that comes with sex is amazing.
Yeah. Same. And but like that, you say that in the wrong company. Yeah. Some people, and I mean, even I remember even getting on birth control as a teenager, like talking to people about that. It was a difficult issue, and my parents, I don't think they liked it when I asked to go on it. They said I was going to have to do it on my own, because they were like, we waited for marriage for sex, and and now my brother and I both live in sin in different parts of the world, and my parents have moved on from that a little bit, but it is heavy. It is, and you talk about it with your girlfriends that have been, you go to these religious situations and you hear it all, and that's what I love about Australia is, I mean, I've been here for a long time, and I just don't feel the kind of the shame and the judgment. I do think that you guys are a lot more progressive in that capacity.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know. I haven't delved enough into why or how that is. I don't know. I wonder if it's all because there's a lot of us who are convicts.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe. I think Australia finds community in less and less judgy spaces. Like, you guys like sports, and I mean, so does the U.S., but there's, we say the prayer before the game or whatever. Like, it's fascinating the way religion influences us in so many ways. But also, I was reading sorry, I'm talking so much. But
it's all good.
I was reading a National Geographic article earlier today. It was all about the history of abortion in the United States before Roe v. Wade. And for a long time, like, it was almost like a non-issue. Like, it wasn't talked about, like, terminate the pregnancy, but, like, to summons your menstruation. You know what I mean? Like, like, doctors talked about it, and it wasn't even... It's interesting, and it kind of reminds me of the vaccines in the way that it's like a thing that everyone suddenly like became for or against, and now it's literally dividing the country. Now we're talking about Handmaid's Tale stuff, and at one stage, no, like maybe it was frowned on by the church a little bit because it might be connected to sex out of wedlock or something like that. But isn't it fascinating with the right influence and judgment and power, we can completely like change the views of the Supreme Court, you know?
And you know, that's the scary thing. So we've been watching when, Trump came into power, women around the world were protesting because he thought it was okay to grab a woman on her pussy and that she was just going to fall over for him, And then we've seen this now with overturning Roe versus Wade. So now, it's up to the individual states to decide whether abortion is going to be illegal or not. And a woman loses that choice over her body. And I think, many of us have watched The Handmaid's Tale in horror thinking, when it first came out, oh, no, that would never happen. And you go, actually, that's a big step because that's the whole thing with The Handmaid's Tale is that a woman's life and body is not her own. It's the government's.
Exactly.
And it's, the men that run the government, you go, I hope, I know people would say it's a massive stretch, but I go, do you know what? There's also rabbit holes that just look at the Nazis.
And if you talk to Margaret Atwood, who wrote Handmaid's Tale before it became the show, the book is based just on the first season. That's the only one I watched. I couldn't keep going. It was too much. It was good, but it was too much. But the first season is based on the book, The Handmaid's Tale. And Margaret Atwood said, nothing I wrote about hasn't happened in history already.
Wow.
So that's important to remember as well. We take so much for granted, I think, in terms of living in a progressive society where we have autonomy, control, and it's so scary to think about in terms of states. Like, you can go now and see where in Kentucky, where my parents live, abortion is currently banned. South Carolina, they've overturned it again as well. So it's changing, and right now at the moment all the states are doing different things. And it's also fascinating, Mel, because I was talking to a friend who told me actually Australia and the United States now have the same policy that the states decide abortions. So I didn't realize that.
No, I didn't either.
So the difference is Australia is just a more progressive country. So they would never, I shouldn't say that. It's possible. Please touch wood. But each state decides the abortion regulations, but it's
we've got progressive governments they're not making the decision to make it illegal.
Even in the more conservative governments, you can still, in every single Australian state, most people should have access to an abortion. And so for me, it's kind of, I was upset about Roe versus Wade, but what really upsets me more is the ideology, ideology that influences. Because if the U.S. was more progressive, then even if it was overturned, all states would see, you don't get to play God, to quote Ani DeFranco. You don't get to play God. A woman gets to decide what to do with her own body.
And when you think about some countries, especially third world countries, if abortion's banned, what they do to women. What they actually do to women if they have one. Let's hope that the states never gets to that.
Well, and that's why, I think I know a lot of people I love who have had abortions, and part of me thinks, you should speak out about it and not be ashamed of it. But I think you do have to tread carefully, because you don't know the direction it could go and how crazy things could get. So I think, give money, use your voice, but be careful, because you don't know how things might change.
Which, is really interesting. And I think that's probably a really great kind of point for us to end on, is it's actually really important for women, for us to have, as you say, to have a voice, to have a point of view, and actually to get involved in the marches, to get involved in actually speaking up, and being heard in terms of women's rights. And, women, we have a right to safety. I work for Got Your Back Sister that helps women who've experienced domestic violence. And we say to them, do you know that domestic abuse is actually a violation of your human rights? The human rights that, that the UN and sets out. it's a violation of your human rights, and they're shocked because they don't realise. But I go, it's true. And that's why it's really important that there's so many, throughout history, women unfortunately have been controlled by men, and now it's happening again with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I think women need to stand up. We need to pay attention and not just let that slide. We need to be careful who we vote into politics and who we set up on pedestals as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point to end on. And I have recently given money to the Carolina Abortion Fund in the United States. That's one that fights. And now that I've found that Kentucky is going in the same direction, I've decided I'm going to give some money to them as well. Also because I'm on this podcast and talking about it, and I don't just want to talk about it. I want to put my money where my mouth is, especially with the people that I love and the women that I love in the South. So thanks, Mel, for you kind of influenced me there. So I appreciate that. You kind of gave me a little bit of the push that I needed to kind of remember that this is one of the most important issues, I think, facing women that I love in the United States. So yes, thank you for that.
And Miss Alex, I just think you're such a gorgeous woman. You do so many beautiful things in your adopted Newcastle, Australia city, and I love watching you. You need to follow Alex on Instagram. She's always doing really funny, creative things, including learning Spanish, which I love that you share that. But, I'm really glad that you were cool to come on and talk about, I guess, seeing how the world has shifted from, your home country, because it does impact Australia and the rest of the world as well. And we get to see a little bit of that through your eyes.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk. I'm definitely no expert, but I am grateful at the moment that I do live in Australia, where as of right now, this is not a worry, and I feel so blessed and lucky, and it's important to remember to vote for the people that want to keep it that way. So yeah, I feel very blessed to be here and also on the podcast today too.
Yay! Amen, sister.
Amen, sister. Got the back, sister.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks for listening to Hey Soul Sista with Mel Histon. What would help you on your crazy life journey? Email Melissa at thesistercode.com.